In this video, I want to show you what happens when you pick the right opportunity and introduce more leverage in the thing that you've been stuck at. Okay. Johan and Jemima started working with us, and they have some extensive background into launching like actual studios, brick and mortar businesses, right? They're in the EMS kind of like world, electromuscle stimulation, I believe is what you call it. It's this new technology around fitness. And essentially, Jemima kind of like started launching it, and she went to Dubai. I should have a full entire interview where she shares her story. Maybe you're going to be able to get to see that. Highly recommend you look at that. And they share the story of how they built these locations and made millions, but also lost millions, and that they were just tired of being commoditized. I mean, you can literally see here the number one motivation was to gain leverage and freedom from our business, to stop being commoditized agency exchanging time for money, quit the job and become an employee of company. I want to be able to work on my business instead of working in my business all the time, to grow our team right away and have the systems helping us stabilize and scale, right? One of the things that the quote that they shared was that they went from a 9 to 5 to working 9 to 9, right? And that's kind of like the reality that most entrepreneurs end up facing. When you get your first success, you realize that we were all lied to. Entrepreneurship is not the key to freedom. It's actually the path to slavery, to enslaving ourselves. And they were averaging around 1 call per week for their offer. The market segment, so essentially they stopped the studios, the physical location, and went into consulting, coaching, and growing other studios. But the problem, or at least even before we started working with them, is that the market segment that they were going after was pretty tiny, right? EMS studio, there's only like 400 locations in the United States and Canada. And most EMS studio owners are single operators, don't have the budget for our services. The lack of leads and the lifetime value of these clients is currently what they are facing. Acquisition channels that they were leveraging, they had done some cold outreach, some paid ads, referrals, or organic social on Instagram, but they didn't necessarily lock in on one that works really well. And the other thing too was pricing. They weren't able to command premium prices for their services. And the other thing is that they wanted is, just build like the 7 day success that we like to ask our clients is like, hey, what can we do in the next first 7 days so we can help you, like feel like, this is actually a great thing that we're doing for you. So this was their before state. Before they started working with us, this was what they were dealing with. As always, collect data around them, around their background, make sure they have access to all the assets. And the number one thing that we did, and we do this with every single client and partner, is make sure that they're going after the right market. This is the most important lever that any entrepreneur founder can pull within their business. It's the thing that dictates the price. It's the thing that dictates how big your business is going to get, right? It's literally more important than even the thing that you sell. What we did here is we didn't necessarily change the market. We just expanded the total addressable market by going after a broader market, which was wellness clinics, right? This makes it easier for us to actually get more leads through paid ads, right? That's step number one. Select the right market and you're going to be fine. Step number two is the right positioning of their offer, the thing that they're actually selling. We didn't want to come off as commodities because, here the biggest bottleneck was struggling to even charge 1.5K per month, right? So what we did here was we wanted to actually come in and position the offer as a system, as an infrastructure, something that we could implement into their businesses and they could automatically see growth, right? And that bridges the whole entire gap. This is something that I've been doing since 2021, right? This is literally the one insight that took my $30,000 a month agency to literally a year later making $600,000 a month and over $250,000 in profit every month. It's ridiculous. When you go from selling commoditized services and selling time to selling assets that people own in their business and they can keep, it changes everything. So we also did this for their offer. Of course, we always have the right pricing, the right guarantee, make clarity on like what is going to be the go-to-market motion, how we're going to get clients, sales asset, right? You need to communicate the value of the system and essentially help them become aware of why they're stuck. So we did that. And then the next thing we did was, at the same time as we're preparing for acquisition, we're doing what? Making sure that we're setting up warming up the ads campaign, starting to work on on the creatives and the strategy of paid acquisition, right? Working on the ads. The next thing, of course, also like the appointment setting script, like how we're actually going to be converting these leads into appointments if they don't self-book. At the same time, FYI, everything is kind of like has a checklist. We have an entire department for creatives, as you can see here. All the clients are kind of like going through everything. At the same time as we're doing the acquisition, the advertising stuff, we're also setting up the back end so that we have systems to track if ever anything breaks, we can actually see where it broke, right? From literally tracking leads to tracking where they're at in the CRM, okay? To setting up the sales kind of like dashboard so they can actually see the investment and the returns, right? After that, launched ads. Boom. Campaign optimization starts because you get to see some high cost per lead, low cost per lead, some things, like you start seeing a lot of bottlenecks once you actually launch acquisition. Some issues came up, right? We had issues with like automations. We had, kind of like also did our best to keep them accountable on things like knowing your numbers and actually sticking to the script, right? But look at what happens. He said, John essentially ended up sending a message like, hey, can we set up a call at 3 p.m. Eastern or Friday? To go over where we're at. I have a feeling we may be closing our first client, right? This was the 2nd of last month, so July. And 2 days later, the first client was sold. 5K client. I believe they collected 50% up front. From the 4th to the 10th, they signed their third client. Actually, so they signed the second client on the 10th. So I believe like 5 days, 6 days later. The third client in the same day on the 10th too. And then the fourth client 5-6 days later. And what is important is that out of the 9 appointments they got, they actually ended up closing 5 clients. So it's one of those ridiculous, like I've never seen this level of conversion. So I'll show you what essentially happened. They generated 9 calls, 8 showed up, and half of them became clients. And they ended up closing the largest EMS franchise in the States, right? And they ended their first 3-4 weeks at $25,000 in revenue, which is really amazing. It's their first 3-4 weeks of actually launching this. So it's really impressive. But the thing that I wanted to show with this case study, and of course what we're going to do is just we're going to be approaching repositioning everything for them so we can actually scale to beyond 6 figures a month. I believe we can do this really fast. But the thing that, if you end up listening to the interview that I did with them is you'll hear that their goal isn't to just like, oh, let's make $100,000 a month, let's make $1 million a month. No. It's like, how do we put the least amount in and get the most amount out? Not everybody wants to, because even this, it's really easy for you to then become a slave to this success and be like, oh, I want to make 25K a month. I want to make 25K a week. Then I want to make 25K a day. Then you're just back on that treadmill. Their goal is we just want to have a business that creates cash flow for us to be able to be free. And that is impossible if you don't have predictability and leverage in your business. Selling to a market that will forever want to trade money to have their problem solved, and having the thing that you sell them not cost you your time. Literally, like if every client you get, you have to then trade your time for money and just keep on trading time for money, the more money you make. That does not make sense, right? That is the most important thing. And another insight that I probably could give to anyone listening to this is this idea that they are the niche that they're selling to, right? If you try to compete with them, you're not going to win because they have experienced and lived from the highs and the lows of who they're trying to sell to. So when they jump on sales calls, even if the person who they're talking with has been burnt by a lot of marketing agencies, they're still willing to bet on John and Jemima because they're talking to themselves. And that is one of the most insightful thing because it led me to realizing that our best clients are actually people who have been doing something. And if they've been in business and they've felt the grind and they just have experience, it's like, okay, how do we then figure out how to solve their problem and take that solution and go sell it back to everybody who's just like them? If you have experience and you understand a specific market, but you're tired of being in that loop of just being stuck trading time for money and where you're a slave to that success, there is one of the greatest opportunities, especially with AI, to solve your problems with AI systems and then go back and sell it back to your niche and eventually end up building an AI platform. So we're doing this every day. We're launching like a lot of these businesses every day. And this was a case study that made me really happy to see because I keep telling people like the goal is to have leverage. The goal is not to just make money. The goal is to find the right market, to find the right thing to sell that is a premium, and to have a system that gets you those ideal clients without you having to essentially sell your soul. So I hope you guys enjoyed this breakdown, and if you want help doing this, then we're happy to help. But take care. Bye-bye.